So when we want to control where we are relative to the marginal ridge, you want to be looking parallel to the marginal ridge. So you know you're leaning the burr toward the marginal ridge. So what you're doing right now is leaning it away from the marginal ridge. And then you're undercutting it. Look this way so you keep the width of the isthmus under control. And you haven't gone to the middle of the contact yet. So we're going to go right over here. Nip, nip, nip until we get right next to the adjacent tooth. Okay. So now you're going to go out facially and find that margin, then come in straight 90 degrees. Go lingually way over here, then come in 90 degrees. Okay, that'll finish the occlusal outline. Then we'll work on going gingivally. Okay? Here? There we go. Okay, so I haven't done much so far. Now you're too close to the marginal ridge. And you're not leaning the burr toward the marginal ridge enough, so you should have been looking this way. And then put the wall right here, knowing that you're leaning the burr toward the marginal ridge. Then look this way when you go through the central groove, so you know where you are relative to the central groove. Cut all the way to the middle of the contact, way over here. Right there. Right to the middle of the contact. Then you're in the position to find your facial lingual margins. Your facial margin is going to be here. Your lingual margin is going to be about here. So this part here, you've already overextended lingually. So when you find the margin, then come in, you'll discover that you've already gone past that wall that you're going to cut in a minute. So that's why we always cut to the middle of the contact before we make the isthmus any wider at all. Okay, so keep going on that. Find those margins.
It's a little wide.
A little wide. Okay.
A wide, maybe.
That's I like a little wide. I'm used to a lot wide. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty wide, but it's shallow. One of the things you have to learn right off is that if it's too shallow, if you get really short walls, then it's really easy to cut too far because you don't have anything to protect you. A taller wall is protection.
Okay.
Also, make sure you're looking along the central groove. So the isthmus should have been about right here. But somehow you got way over here, huh? So we look along the central groove when we're doing the isthmus. And then we look along the marginal ridge when we do the dovetail. About here.
Okay.
But you see, I can see what I need to see. I can see I'm leaning the burr toward the marginal ridge. I can see the position relative to the marginal ridge. I can see the height of that wall. So that's where your wall should have been right there. That's undermining the marginal ridge. And at this point, you were really shallow here. You started out like super shallow, and then you got way overextended. And then you're in trouble from there on. Okay. Anyway, we're going to cut to from here, we're going to cut to the middle of the contact, which is here. Okay?
Till there, okay.
Yeah, we cut to the middle of the contact. That's the important step that I was emphasizing during the lecture. So here's the middle of the contact. That means that's the middle of the box. The middle of the box is here.
Middle of the box is there? Okay.
Yeah, that's where the middle of the contact
So I
is.
have to still go buckle and...
A lot.
Yeah.
And then lingually, you went way too far already.
Yes.
All right? So we look this direction. Once we get to the middle of the contact, we look this direction and then find where the margins are facial and lingually. Lingually, it should have been about right here. And then you would have come in straight from there at a 90-degree angle. So this is where the lingual wall would have been optimally. Yeah, and that's because you're so shallow, it was really easy for the burr to slip and cut too far out. Okay, so now you're going to go this way out and find the facial margin. Then when you find the facial margin out here, then you're going to cut in 90 degrees. Then you're going to make a curve to join the isthmus. Then you'll have an outline form that we can work with. Okay? But again, see how important it is to look in the right direction for each step?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And you can raise and lower this as you want too, that way. And this we can probably put behind, underneath somewhere, yeah. Okay, so let's see how we're doing on 5 over here. All right, so you're a little shallow. So let's measure the wall heights. So at the marginal ridge here, yeah, you're less than half the burr, aren't you? So we want to be almost the whole height of the burr. So we would normally have cut along like this, following the central groove, and then over here look this way when you're close to the marginal ridge. And maybe a little deeper. So now I've got my wall height where I want it here. I got the basic shape of the dovetail. Then the isthmus, we're going to keep the same pulpal floor level all the way back through the isthmus. And then all the way to the middle of the contact. Okay, so now you're in the middle of the contact. We got a pretty good position for your lingual margin. But again, it's too shallow. You're tending to try to keep the pulpal floor rising there. You just want to keep the pulpal floor at the same level all the way to the margin. Don't let the pulpal floor rise as it approaches these margins. Then when you come in 90 degrees, it'll be easier and safer. Now facially, we have to come out farther. We have to get out to about here to get the 1/2 millimeter clearance.
Yeah, my problem is that I don't know how to position the mirror and where to
Well,
position the
but
mirror.
now you know. So you can see what I'm seeing, but you can also see how I'm doing it, can't you? Right? I'm just positioning the mirror so that I can look from the lingual downward at a 45-degree angle and parallel to the contact. So again, it's all a matter of figuring out, okay, what do I need to see here? Right now I need to see how close I am to the adjacent tooth. So what I can see in the mirror is how close I am to the adjacent tooth. And then I can do a little bit and then look vertically down the axis in the mirror, and I can see how close I am to the adjacent tooth, and I can see how much clearance I'm getting. Right? So when I find the margin then, with the burr as close as I can to the adjacent tooth, then I can cut from that margin inward and adjust the angle however I want it. 90 degrees for amalgam, obtuse for composite, still a little bit obtuse. So just change it until you're happy. And take your time. When you're really happy with your margin and your clearance and your angle and the length, then make a smooth curve to join the isthmus. You could have preserved this triangular ridge a little bit more. But then once you have the margin and the angle and the length, then you can go ahead and go gingerly by putting your corner about right here. Right here, I'd probably make it a little bit closer to 90. But again, the margin and the angles are done by trial and error. So I'm changing the angle and I look to see how I did. Now it's 90. Then you can go gingerly with the corner about right here and about right here. So use those corners with a 55 burr, cut away from that wall and away from this wall, and then you'll probably have an axial that has a good shape, and then continue doing that, getting rid of the excess as you go gingerly until you get gingival clearance. Okay? All right, so pretty good start. All right, so you let the burr slip around the outside here a little bit, huh? So you have to be careful. We want to make sure we start with the burr at the margin near the adjacent tooth and then only cut from the outside inward. Never cut outward, okay? So look over there. So never cut outward, always cut from the margin inward. And just a little bit at a time until you're happy with the margin and the angle. So my angle is a little bit obtuse still. And once you get the margin and the angle and the length, then you can make the curve to join the isthmus. In this case, there won't be much of a curve because your isthmus is so wide. But then you can find the corner of the box about right here, and then go gingerly there and cut away from this wall. So there's the beginning of your axial, starting from the face wall and coming this way. Then find the corner of the box here and cut gingerly and then cut away from that wall going this way. Use the 55 burr, get rid of the excess. And again, if you're looking this way, you're not going to hit the adjacent tooth like this.
Should be from outwards to inwards.
We always cut from the outside in, from the margin inward, but also make sure you're looking in the right direction so you know that the burr is not hitting the adjacent tooth. Okay. All right, coming along. Okay, so the deal is that you're not ready to use the hand instruments until your prep is ready as far as you can with the burrs. And that means getting nice clean margins, no undermined enamel, getting rid of all the excess. Okay, so you went gingerly, but look at all this excess here near the adjacent tooth.
Okay.
Right? There's still lots and lots there.
Yeah.
Until you get rid of that, you don't have a gingival margin. Until you have a gingival margin, you can't see if you've gone far enough gingially.
Okay.
Because we go gingially based on the clearance between the margin and the adjacent tooth. So let's get rid of some of this excess here. And I mean get rid of it right up next to the adjacent tooth. Look how close I have to get the burr to the adjacent tooth. Better get used to that. Okay, so now we're getting rid of all this excess, so we're making a flat floor. But look, now we have a clean margin, but there's absolutely no clearance at all, right?
Yeah.
So now you know I have to go farther. But before you do that, you've got to get rid of the undermined enamel over here. So your margin your wall should have come in about like this. So now we've got undermined enamel, so we have to fix that first by getting rid of by moving the margin out lingually. So now look, you can see how undermined all this is down here, huh? Okay, so then we find the corner of the box about right here. Then get rid of the excess so the gingival part matches the occlusal part. But we would have put the axial about right here preferentially. Okay, and then facially, again, we could remove a little bit more of the excess here toward the gingival. So basically going gingivally, I'd probably put oh, guess what? My handpiece has decided to complain. So I'll get you a different handpiece in a minute. Yeah. See how it's wobbling?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I can't do light. I can't see it properly because of the light.
Is it too bright?
No, it's too low.
Too dark?
Yeah, too dark. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now I can see it.
Okay. So anyway, I'm going to give you another handpiece, but now that the bearing has gotten lost, again, find the corners and cut away from that wall. Find the corner here, cut away from this wall. Then get rid of the excess at the facial lingual walls and gingially, looking this way so you know you're not damaging the adjacent tooth.
So I remove the excess with the same burr?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do it the same way I just did. And then do it again, facially, lingually, gingially, looking this way. And then see if you get some clearance. If you don't, use those corners and go gingially again, those 7 steps.
Okay.
But I better get you a different handpiece first.
But the buccal wall I got cut because when I'm trying to move the handpiece, it's not. I have to put force to go in the gingival, like.
A little bit. You have to
Yeah.
make a nice little hole down there.
To cut it, so I slipped it and I got a cut on the buccal wall.
Yeah, well, that's just where we're starting, that's all. So let's go back to the 55 burr.
So as soon as I do the gingival cut, I have to go to 55.
Yeah, when you're going gingerly below the pulpal floor, use a 55. It'll make it a lot easier. Okay, so let's take a look over there. So see the way you had the burr leaning like this? So this is one of the things. If the burr is not vertical, if it's leaning away from vertical too much, it's going to really destroy a lot of your prep. So we have
Where
to
I have to place it?
vertical. Always.
Yeah, I got you. We're together.
Always keep the burr vertical. The burr is straight. It's a straight
Yes,
burr,
yes,
right? Yeah. All burrs are straight. Okay, so if you had it vertical, you would have controlled the facial wall about here. Would have been about like this. So all that wouldn't have been cut. So this is basically undermining a lot of tooth structure up there.
Not vertical.
Yeah, and if you're trying to look from the facial when you're doing it, it's really easy to lean the burr away from your eye, and then you undercut the facial a lot. So we're always, most people that look from the facial and then try to do the prep without the mirror, do exactly what you did, undercut the facial like tremendously. It's possible to do it from the facial using direct vision,
No,
but
I
you still
tried indirect. I didn't do that.
okay. But you still have to make sure that you're looking from the other direction, that you're confirming that the burr is vertical. Okay, and then keep your axial more under control. Okay, keep your axial about right here.
Yours is cutting smoothly, but I have to dig in.
Yeah, well, I'm not in a big hurry. Okay, but keep the burr vertical, and then the end of the burr gives a really nice smooth floor. When you have the burr leaning at different angles, then the gingival floor is going to be really rough.
And I went too far with the gingival floor, right? In the
But
isthmus.
your gingival clearance looks pretty good.
No, in the isthmus.
Oh, you mean
my
the axial wall?
box. Yes.
Yeah, you went way too deep axially. So that's overextending axially. Now we're going to smooth this wall here a little bit on the lingual, but I'm going to be doing it by refining the occlusal part of the wall first. At the level of the pulpal floor, find the margin, find the angle, get the length, make the curve to join the isthmus. Then I can find the corner of the box about right here. Define the corner there, then get rid of the excess along that wall to match the gingival part to the occlusal part. And now we're starting to look pretty good as far as this whole area, but of course we're way overextended. But that's what happens when you're looking the wrong way and not keeping the burr vertical. Okay, so we're still, this is probably deeper axially than it needs to be even right here. Okay. Okay, anyway, your gingival clearance is reasonable, and so you can try to put a retentive groove in about right here, and then try to put another retentive groove about right over here. And then you can start on the upper left. We're going to do 20, but you see there's damage here. Now, how'd that happen? This is a new typonod, isn't it?
No, I have to. I
okay.
have some teeth already, right?
Okay, so change 12 so we get a contact. You can save 12 and do something else on it later,
Yeah.
but you probably shouldn't put it back in with the new teeth. There's a
No, I didn't put it back.
yeah,
Whatever
but
I changed.
there's a
is
little
separate.
box in there that says damaged teeth. Put this in with the damaged teeth.
Okay. I didn't
So
see
see right there, it says damaged teeth. You can put that in over here.
that. Okay.
Okay, so don't mix it up with the new teeth. Anyway, so change 12, and then you can do 12 DO, but again, do the occlusal outline really carefully with the 330 burr. And then now you know a little bit more about how to go gingivally after that. Okay? All right. Okay, let's see. Okay, so what's your biggest issue here? What's the...
Gingival floor is big.
Nope.
Wide,
That's true. That's not the biggest issue.
and it's not parallel. The axial.
Okay, that's true, but not the biggest issue. It's interesting, though. It took me like a microsecond to see this problem, and I know that somewhere in the back of your mind you know the problem, but your brain doesn't want you to admit it. What do you say?
I
What did you just say?
adjacent to it.
Adjacent tooth. Definitely your biggest problem. So look the way you had the burr leaning. See this? You had the burr leaning like totally into the adjacent tooth. So is that vertical?
No.
Sometimes when you do the class 2, we have to keep the burr vertical. Okay? When you don't keep it vertical, because you're trying to look down the axis, when you're doing the box and trying to look this direction, you're always going to hit the adjacent tooth. It's a guarantee. There's few guarantees in life. That's one. Okay. So that's why we always look this way when you're working in the box. So you can see the difference between this and this. All right?
Yeah.
This is a huge problem. This is just fine. Okay? And then make sure you also, when you're going gingerly, you look this way to make sure the burr is vertical. Over here, you start leaning the burr not just undercutting the facial, but also toward the adjacent tooth. So you had the burr at a very awkward angle. So it wasn't vertical at all. Now you know the consequences. Okay, that's what we're trying to learn. Okay, yeah, and definitely, so you're undercutting the facial too much. You're definitely way overextended axially. Could have been about right here. leaning the burr toward the adjacent tooth. You're undercutting the axial wall because you're trying to look down the axis. So all that gets to be a problem. Now your lingual wall is not too far off. If you wanted to make it a little bit better, we could refine the occlusal part a bit and then match the gingival part to the occlusal part. Again, keeping the burr vertical all the time. And we could have kept the axial wall about right here. And then when you put a retentive groove in, you can put it where the axial wall should have been, about right here. Get rid of the excess along this wall, again, so the gingival part matches the occlusal part, but much more difficult to do when you have to lean the burr and undercut that wall, which we never do. We just make sure you keep the burr vertical all the time. Okay, so again, when you're going gingival, really make sure you're looking in the right direction. Don't ever try to look down the axis again. Now you've proven to yourself that that doesn't work. Okay? So when you do 12, use your 330 burr, do the occlusal outline as completely as you can, then 55 burr, go gingival. Keep the burr vertical, you'll be okay. All right? Okay. Let's take this out. All right. Well, you sure went deep enough gingival, huh?
Too far gingival.
Yeah, too far. So when we go gingival, go a little bit at a time. Don't be in too big a hurry. So, and then make sure you always get rid of all the excess. So look at all the excess you have on the facial side here. And you had the burr leaning lingually instead of keeping it vertical, so you undercut that wall. So you made a big hole there, which undermined all that gingival enamel. So you had a nice margin on the occlusal, and you had a nice exit angle on the occlusal. Then because you didn't keep the burr vertical, then you undercut that whole wall like that. So make sure you check that the burr is vertical when you go gingival. Now we're going to get rid of all that excess along that wall. Get rid of the excess all the way down to the gingival. Once you get rid of the excess, then you can tell if you have to go farther gingival. The problem is what a lot of people do is they cut the holes and they cut away from these walls, they get an axial wall wherever it is, and then they don't get rid of the excess, facial, lingually, and especially gingival. If you don't get rid of the excess gingival, then you don't know if you've gone far enough gingival.
The axis is inhibited.
Yeah, we go gingival until we get clearance. But with excess, you can't tell what clearance you have. Now, you did get rid of the excess gingival here nicely, but you should have gotten rid of it when it was much less deep gingival. Now over here, let's try to get rid of all the excess along that lingual wall. So here's where your corner is. So we can use that corner, but now let's get rid of the excess.
So which burr is used?
The same one I'm using right now.
55.
Yeah, this is what we do when we go gingival. We just use the 55 burr. Okay, so now we have a flat wall. We have a corner here. Okay, so that's where you're going to put the retentive groove. But that's where the axial wall should have been, really about right here. So when you're this deep gingivally, the gingival floor should be about 1 millimeter. It doesn't have to be very far in, because when you go that deep gingivally, the gingival floor gets really tiny for the same axial wall position. Okay, now notice here you had the burr leaning very much toward the distal. That's why your pulpal floor gets deeper and deeper and deeper toward the distal side. That gets to be a problem. Okay, so controlling the occlusal outline and controlling where the corners are, that's what makes the biggest difference when it comes to being able to control yourself as you go gingivally. But do each of the 7 steps completely. Get the gingival floor nice and clean all the way to the margin, and then if you need more clearance, go gingivally. But a lot of people just go gingivally, go gingivally, go gingivally, and they never get rid of the excess. And by the time they do get rid of the excess, they discover that they were 1 millimeter too deep, which is, I think, what happened with you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so 330 burr and work on 12 DO and see how that works out. Okay.
Thank you.